Hello everyone, it's Jamal Thomas. Welcome to the Progressive Soapbox. I'm laughing because I'm supposed to be going and doing something else, but I can't focus. And so I'm back on this. And if I'm honest, I wanted to end this night on like a 420. A jovial, upbeat, maybe even contemplative note. Not so much. When I come across information that deals with issues of war and issues of larger consequence, especially when I think that we're stepping inexorably to a larger consequence or a larger conflict, I make it known. These videos are immediately demonetized, but I make it known anyway because I think it's more important. It's one of those things that I said, it's like you become a tool to some degree, and once you take on this thing of a share of your income is responsible from the standpoint of profit motive, you're incentivized to do some stories as opposed to other stories. And that becomes somewhat weird because there's certain stories that you naturally gravitate towards that you want to do that you know are not necessarily as profitable to do, but you do them because you feel like you need to get it out. This is one of those stories where I feel like I need to get it out because I scream at it. I harp on this. I nailed this point down that people who are talking about Nerf bombs, those people are in the fucking weeds. This is profoundly dangerous. The events that are taken around you are profoundly dangerous. Look, when I was younger, when I was a kid, I always say people have a tendency to believe that the world to which they find themselves will persist on forever. Just getting up in a particular day and going about your day and doing it over and over and over again makes it feel like that day is going to go on in perpetuity forever. It will not. Not only will that day not go in perpetuity forever, the world will not go into perpetuity forever. At some point, as the sun expands and it eats up oxygen and nitrogen and all these other things, it gets to the point of it gets to iron, in which case it stops. And the moment it stops, by that time it would have engulfed the entire of the solar system. 93 astronomical miles, an insane distance. And it would be engulfed in our sun, this life giver. My point is, things change. Change is a constant. And even though it doesn't necessarily seem like that from the standpoint of you doing something day by end or day out, it will change. Drastic changes at times take place in times that people are not thinking that these drastic changes are going to take place. Your personal reality, the small space to which you consider reality, the decision space, can be acted upon by larger factors within this particular game space and with factors within the larger reality even beyond this game space, for the sake of being hit by a comet. You should not be passive in looking at what these guys are doing, because what these guys are doing will dramatically affect you. Your reality can change. And the reason I harp on this, because it doesn't, people seem to blow this off. And I think I get why they blow this off, but they shouldn't. When I was a kid, I think I was 17 years old. I've said this before. I was diagnosed with kidney failure. Now, dealing with the issue itself is not the thing. Believe it or not, it's not the thing. It's bad, yes, you have to deal with it day to day. But you get accustomed to that. The human body gets accustomed to those things. Human being are pliable like nobody's business. You get familiar, you get used to it. Who you are as a person gets kind of wrapped around the thing that you deal with, and you deal with it. It's the shock. It's the awakening. It's the holy shit, I did not know that they were this inadequate. It's that. That's the stunning thing. It's that presence of becoming woke all at once. You're not coddled anymore. This is not the capacity for coddling. In fact, you're beyond coddling. You, as an intelligence, is grafted to this physical matter reality being that allows you to interact in this particular space. It's defective in some way. And you have a limitation on your physical being that will limit your decision space in a way that other people's decision space are not limited. Congratulations, you're at the lottery. It's rare. It's out the blue. But my point here is, you're all at once. You're aware of, the doctor can't deal with each and everything that he's confronted with. As a kid, you think the doctor will give me a shot and a lollipop and the world will be perfectly okay. And you realize, oh, that's not true. B, you realize that even whether you're good or bad, it doesn't necessarily matter. Bad shit happens. Shit happens. Kids get cancer. This idea of God being some kind of, looking over people for doing good and everything else is nonsense. You can be the nicest person on the planet and get hit by a bus. It's random. Maybe not be random from, this kind of metaphysical level, but from where we are, from our perspective, it's to some degree random. Random is too strong. I mean, you know, the events, the things that you do propagate a certain reality and everything else. But I'm just making the point that there are things that intrude upon your larger world. And it's shocking to realize when those things intrude upon your larger world that there was in fact an actual larger world. Imagine being a mob boss pinched by the FBI. Holy shit, his reality changes overnight. There was a larger world that was looking at him that he wasn't necessarily paying attention to. These things happen. These things are most disastrous when we're talking about issues of war and peace. You're working a job one day, you're sloshing through the meadow in some kind of country, and another day shooting people in the face. Oh my God, how did this happen? How am I being stabbed by a Nazi? Why am I shooting a Nazi? How is this rational? Why am I walking through this battlefield where these guys are corpses and heads, mangled bodies? Why did this happen? Why did 50 million people die in this particular conflict? How did this start? You go back to the earlier conflict, or the earlier. And the question is always asked, how did this start? Why weren't these people aware that these larger events were taking place? Where were they? Why did you let your government do this? Why? Didn't you see that this was coming? Didn't you see that this was going to take place? Didn't you see these guys lining up in the way that they were lining up? Why didn't you stop this? You've never seen this, so I'm not even going to ask. But take a look at this. I'm only going to show a piece of it. This is significant, and something else. It relates to something that happens, I think, today or yesterday. That was just as significant, if not more so. It's a little hokey. Fair enough, it's a little hokey. What this is China has invited Russian troops to celebrate in a parade in Beijing in September to commemorate the end of World War II, the Defense Ministry said on Monday. A state ministry statement issued on the ministry's website on Monday said Fan Changlong, vice chairman of the China Central Ministry Commission, told Russian Defense Minister Sergei Sergey that China warmly welcomes Russian military leaders and army formations to take part in September events in Beijing. This is China interacting with the Russian military for events. They're so closely related. And to some degree, you can say this is somewhat of a statement to the world of how closely interrelated that they are. They are taking part in each other's military parades. Today, or yesterday, let me find the date on this, April 3rd. Today, this comes out. China's defense chief calls his Moscow trip a signal to the United States. Is it now? China's new defense minister said a visit to Russia is a signal to the United States about increasingly close military ties between Moscow and Beijing. The unusual bond statement Tuesday by General Wei Fenghe. I'm sorry about the name. I'm bashing his name. At the start of his talks with the Russian Defense Minister Sergei reflected growing military cooperation between two former communist rivals. Speaking in Moscow, Wei emphasized that chose Russia for his first trip abroad since becoming the international face of China's military last month to show the world a high level of development of our bilateral relations and firm determinations of our armed forces to strengthen strategic cooperation. Wei added that he would attend a security conference Wednesday hosted by the Russian Defense Minister to let Americans know about the close ties between the armed forces between China and Russia. People are choosing their sides. They're choosing their sides. They understand what's taking place. And while we're at it, I was going to do a video about this by itself, but I think I'm shorting this video. There was a conversation. Vladimir Putin was having an interview, and in that interview, Vladimir Putin was asked, why is there a conflict between America and Russia? Now, and I think that question was a little bit more nuanced than the way I'm putting it. I think that he essentially said, what is the difference between the characters of Americans versus Russians? And Vladimir Putin gave an awesome answer. Now, when I say he gave an awesome answer, I say this only from myself. I'm saying this poorly. I'm sorry. I'm bad at doing two things at once. So let's do this. Let's flip over and let's find that video. I say this only because he's effectively said what I said about how we engage the world. It's essentially, it's a term of self-flattery. That's where I'm gonna. I have that video in my history. Where is that video? I'm sorry, guys. Give me 1 second. I hadn't planned on playing this video, but it runs in line with the point that I'm trying to make. Interview with Putin, right? Oh, that's Gorbachev. What the hell? Alright. I don't get it. I can't find it. Nevertheless, I just showed him the video by itself. But ultimately, the only thing he said, and the reason why I say it was an awesome answer, because when look, how do I know what I am without having something to compare myself to? Right? Is that a fair assessment? How can I really tell you what I am without having something by which I'm basing myself on, comparing myself to? From the standpoint of nations, we have other nations to compare ourselves to. Often our friends will say very nice things about us, but our competitors will tell us things that hide in our closets. And if I am in this country and I'm trying to understand who I am, I'm trying to get a full contextual understanding of what I am, meaning what it means to be an American. What is America in and of itself? What is the idea versus what is the reality? Your competitors can give you actual information sometimes. Sometimes what they say is a lie. Sometimes what they say is true. Fact is, the countries have done so much. All of these guys are bad actors to such a degree that when they get on the world stage and they proclaim and they take this moral high ground, they're doing it, but understand they fundamentally have done the same thing. Usually most of them, if not all of them, are hypocrites. It's just the way that it is. It's the way you have to look at politics. You have to look at the political actors as if they're political actors similar to the people in your country. They're hypocrites. Understand that when you're dealing with the contextual parts of these arguments. Meaning they could say something that's true, but that in no way adds any color or glamour to them. It's this weird quirk that human beings, it's like just because this person says something that is true, it adds color to it. No, it doesn't. It just means that the person said something that was true. Doesn't make him any more of an angel or a devil. He just says something in this particular case that was true. He's an autocrat. He's a bad, horrible guy. That bad, horrible guy also said something that was true. I don't necessarily like Steve Bannon. At the same token, Steve Bannon sometimes gives amazing political analysis. In this case, he says what my assessment of things. That ultimately, you can't have it both ways. If you, as a power within a world, have this idea that you can do whatever you want as a superpower, I can kick over democracies or countries that I don't particularly like. I can wag a finger. We can invade countries when we want to invade those countries. We can come up with pretenses in order to invade those countries and self-justify the fact that we've invaded those countries. We can do this unilaterally, just us as the West. We are the bellwethers of what this world is. This is what they're saying. Now, I look at this and I say to myself, what is the effect of this on other countries? Meaning, assuming for the moment that I am not in the West, and I, as a person with a brain and ears and eyes, and I have reasoning faculties, and I say, well, wait a minute. These guys, how are these guys making the determination to do this themselves? And what they're doing is adversely affecting me. So as a country, how am I supposed to respond and behave to these people believing that they can do whatever they want? Not just do whatever they want. When they don't get their way, bitch and moan and complain. And sometimes use their military to dominate, to kill, to maim, to go into other countries and destroy those countries. How are we supposed to take the world that these people have decided that they want to create? There are other people around the world, and the standard that the United States applies, the standard that the West applies, how on earth are they going to have one standard and then give somebody else a completely different standard? I hold the Howard Zinn test, if you want to call it the Howard Zinn test, the Noam Chomsky test. Shouldn't I be judged in the same way that I'm judging someone else? If this guy is a horrible, bloodthirsty murderer, and we're doing the same thing, then what does that make us? How is that not a fair assessment of things? It is a perfectly fair assessment. It's an earnest assessment. And the problem is that that's the problem. That's the issue. You're giving an earnest assessment to yourself. You're giving an earnest assessment to how you operate in the world itself. And you judge what you say based on the things that you yourself do. It's a mirror that's held up to the country. This is what you are. This is really, honestly, what you are. This is how you operate in the world. People don't like that. They feel some kind of way about that. That feels unpatriotic. That feels un-American. Fact is, the most patriotic thing in the world is to understand your country's failings and to still love it just the same. It's like having a kid that's somewhat of a fucked up kid. My kid gets on my nerves sometimes, but I love my kid. I don't have any kids. I'm just making a point. Except my dog. My dog annoys the shit out of me sometimes. With all his failings, I love him to death. It's not unpatriotic. Patriotism in and of itself is not real. What it is looking at the aggregation, the way you've aggregated yourself as a society, and making determinations on how you want to be. What do you want to be? What do you want to strive for? Do you want to strive for anything at all? What are the things that you hate? What are the things that you love? What are the things that you want to change? You have to start at an honest baseline before you can even get to those particular questions. This idea of patriotism and everything else covers over the bad stuff. Don't cover over the bad stuff. Change the bad stuff. There's a difference in those things. Look, my point is, we stumble into these things over and over and over again. And there's a point where you look up and you're like, oh my God, we're stumbling into something again. Do you remember, well, you know, you're not going to remember it. World War I, the ramp up. I can't think of his name, but gets shot in Serbia. One guy getting shot. All hell breaks loose. One country has a military alliance, another country has a military alliance, another country has a military alliance, another country has a military alliance. Do you realize all of these countries, I've said this before, many of these countries had intermingled bloodlines, meaning they were cousins, relatives with one another. They were shocked as shit that this was taking place. Germany ramps up. Russia ramps up. And they're like, well, if this guy's ramping up, I need to ramp up because that guy's ramping up. Because I can't be caught flat-footed. Meaning the very first one that does it means that just by virtue of incentive, everybody has to do it. It becomes somewhat mechanistic. The moment that one kicks off, it all kicks off. There is no way for one country to ramp up and the other country says nothing. That particular country could be caught flat-footed. Militaristically, it has to ramp up. In this case, you have all of these countries hyped up, ready for something to pop off. Somebody believes something's going to pop off, something pops off. and all of these other countries are bonded with one another based on treaties that these countries have signed with one another. Russia was shocked that Germany was going to war. When you look at what these guys were saying, meaning, I can't think of his name. For some reason, I can't think of his name. The Tsar, the one who was in charge at the time. He gave up his powers to the Duma, that particular one, the last Tsar. He was shocked by this. Like, when you're looking at the historical reports, he was like, we're related. How is this taking place? How is this popping off in this way? They're shocked. They did not believe that this war was going to take place, and nevertheless, that war took place. I say it over and over again. There is a point in which the people who are in power lose control of those events. It becomes mechanistic. It becomes a game of chess. One person does this, requiring the other person to do something else in response to the fact that the person did that, purely because they can't trust the other party. If I trusted you not to do something, I don't necessarily need to respond. The fact is, I can't trust you. Because I can't trust you, I need to respond. I need to do this. I need to prep myself in this way. I need to move militarily in a particular way. So NATO nations have started increasing the amount of money they spend on their military budgets. These countries have been moving forces to the Russian border. Russia has been responding by moving country forces to their border. This doesn't look good. Britain screams at the top of his lungs, "Oh my God, a spy was poisoned." And Russia did it. Those Ruskies did it. We can prove it, even though our scientists say that they don't know where it comes from. Russia, and in America, hysteria. Russia hacked the election. Okay, they didn't hack the election. They colluded with Putin. No, they didn't collude with Putin. They had Facebook and Twitter ads. And you have all of these people, all of these hillbots running around with their hair on fire, screaming at the top of their lungs that Russia was the reason that that woman lost. That woman lost on her own merits. It doesn't matter to them. They need it to make their world secure, because otherwise she lost on her own merits. My point is, this is dangerous. They're using this for political effect, but this has real world consequences. Russia comes out saying they have a missile that can exceed any kind of air detection or anything else. It's a hypersonic nuclear missile. Holy shit, the world gasped. They have a hypersonic nuclear missile. A bunch of lefties on supposedly lefty news networks comes out and says, how are we going to counter Russia's nuclear missiles? As if they're asking lefties for a ramp up militaristically. Missing the kind of fundamental question of why does Russia feel that it needs to do that? You understand that that's not necessarily a provocation in and of itself. That's a provocation that came from another provocation, which came from another provocation. At some point, all of these people are guilty. At some point, it takes on mechanistic quality, where one does something just because of the other and the other and the other. It takes on a life of its own. It becomes an incentive that destroys itself. This is problematic. They've moved the nuclear clock, the clock to oblivion, 2 minutes to midnight. This is problematic. That's all I'm saying. We need to be very aware of the steps that these guys are taking, and this is undoubtedly a ramp up. When China is associating with Russia, saying we're connected, Russia is already aligned with Syria. And yeah, they would also be aligned with Iran and likely North Korea. And there may be other republics that come on saying, maybe this is the time to change the world order. That's a nuclear war. There is no winning to that war. What's true about it is, when both countries launch, what you would find would be that both countries would just be obliterated. Even if they try to limit themselves to a ground war, at some point, one country is going to take an advantage. Assume for the moment that one country doesn't take an advantage. Assume that the war plots on and on and on and on, and the specter of a nuclear attack continues and lingers for God knows how long. What does the world look like under that hellscape? And understand, the moment that there's one push, one getting through where you can try to go at whatever the enemy is at this point, there will be a strike. It would all go in a blaze of glory, because no country is going to allow themselves to be obliterated without obliterating the other country. All I'm saying is be aware of what your government is doing. And this is worrying. And this is extremely dangerous. Yeah, be aware of what your government is doing. Look, I wanted this to be a bubbly 420 happy-go-lucky. And put both articles at the bottom, by the way, or this article is at the bottom. I've added a lot of stuff that I didn't mean to talk on, but I wanted this to be this kind of bubbly 420 contemplative video. That I wanted to be this kind of cool way of ending the night. This kind of existential angst, human need and desire, this kind of Captain Kirk feeling of angst about things. But not so much. Not so much. I wanted this to feel like our bell. It's 1 in the morning. And this at late at night, cutting the radio off or cutting the lights off and having Art Bell in your ear saying some weird and insane shit, but with this passable voice, this peaceful melodic voice that's perfect for the radio and that's calming you. Your world may be falling apart, but you know that Art Bell is going to be there at that particular day and that particular time over and over and over again. And there's this kind of calmness and consistency that is awesome and feels welcoming of sorts. But not so much. This is the world is coming to an end. There's going to be a hellscape and all shit is going to fall apart. I'm sorry. Wish I could get better news. All I got is what's here. 49 people are here. Let's see. Honestly, if Trump is corrupt with Russia and it's the only thing preventing World War III, I'll take it. Oh, man. That's sad, right? That's sad, man. If that's where we are, that's sad. That's really sad. Monica Lewinsky saved us from Social Security being privatized. Weirder things have happened. Weirder things have happened. Yeah, I don't want to fight Russia or China or Korea. So I don't want to fight any of them either. I agree with you. Moni, I agree. I absolutely agree. The reason why I do these videos is because I agree. I want to point a finger at, look at what's taking place. Your world, they're large realities. One of those large realities is the international politics that these guys go after. We act in a particular way, and you must understand the way to which we act is bothersome with people around the globe. They don't like being stepped on. They don't like being pretended as if they're nothing. Yeah, I'm going to show the Russia video, the Putin video, because it's fascinating. The point of view is a critique of the United States. And the critique is not unfair or unbiased or anything else. It's an honest critique. Now, somebody else may say that asshole that's Vladimir Putin because it's coming from Vladimir Putin is horrible. That is insanity to look at it that way. Sometimes your enemy gives you this idea of what you actually are. And yeah, you need to have contextual look of it, but it may be actually what you are. I'm going to find that video and show it. So I'm going to end this here. All right, guys. If you enjoy the content, please feel free to share, like, subscribe, and of course, you can always support through Patreon. Thanks, everyone.